to the stage a big round of applause for Daniel Baxter.
It was 10 a.m. Thursday, July 18th. I had just stepped off of the Dexter bus onto West Grand Boulevard. I was 19 years old, stepping into my very first job. Just moments ago, I was downtown at the City County building where I was certified as an official City of Detroit employee. As I walked into the Detroit Department of Elections, this overweight security guard looked me up and down, but it wasn't him who I had a conversation with. Standing next to him was this middle-aged, professionally dressed brother. And above both of them, inscribed on the wall, was an excerpt of Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. And that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Those were more than just words. Those were a promise. You know, after I cleared my voice, I said, "Good morning." The man that was professionally dressed said, "Good morning. You must be Mr. Baxter." I said, "I am." He shook my hand and he said, "Come on in, take the elevator to the second floor. The deputy director, Mr. Azus, is expecting you." As I turned and took the elevator to the second floor, I took a last glance at the Gettysburg Address and I realized that somehow, some way, I was stepping into more than just a job. I was stepping into history. Over the years, I learned everything that I could. I was like a sponge. And to embellish my learning and my experience, I went back to school. I got my bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Detroit, Mercy. Then it happened in 2005. Preparation married opportunity and gave birth to purpose. The new city clerk, Janice Winfrey, appointed me as director of elections. I tell you, the journey was anything but easy, but every challenge, every experience was well worth the trip. You see, I was there when Detroit's first black elected mayor, Coleman Alexander Young, ran in his last two terms. I was there when Detroit elected the youngest mayor in the history of the city of Detroit, Kwame Malik Kilpatrick. I was even there when Mike Duggan ran his historical write-in campaign for mayor of the city of Detroit. And I was there in 2005. And I was there in 2008 when history unfolded before all of our eyes, when then United States Senator Barack Hussein Obama ran for president of these United States of America. That election was unlike anything I had experienced. Excitement had saturated the entire city of Detroit. I remember 2 weeks before Election Day, thousands of people lined up in front of the Department of Elections, eager to cast their vote and be a part of history. You know, that Monday before Election Day, I remember the building was saturated with people from the first floor to the fourth floor. I went downstairs to the first floor to check things out and make sure that everything was running smoothly when I noticed this sister standing at the counter. She had on a Black Panther baseball cap, and she flagged me to her attention. So I went over to her, and I said, "Yes, ma'am, how may I help you?" She said, "Are you in charge?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, how may I help you?" She looked me square in my eyes, and she said, "Y'all better not fuck this up." I paused because I didn't want to say anything that I would regret saying. And I said, I beg your pardon, ma'am. What did you just say? She said, oh, no, you ain't got to beg. You heard me the first time. Y'all bet not fuck this up. I said, ma'am, you see that officer over there at the door? If you don't leave out of this building, I'm going to have him throw you out. She said, no, you ain't got to throw me out. I'm going to leave peacefully. I came here and I said what I needed to say. And she turned and walked away. And when she grabbed the door, she looked back at me and pointed her finger and said, y'all better not fuck this up. You know, after I calmed down, after I gathered myself, you know, the one thing that I recognized and observed was the fact that that lady wasn't threatening me. Somehow, some way, she was speaking for every ancestor who never had an opportunity to vote and looked for that moment. She was speaking for every person that fought, struggled, and died for that right to exist. No, her words were not designed to be menacing. They were a prayer, a hope, and a plea. On election night, when the results rolled in, Barack Hussein Obama was the 44th president of the United States of America. People all over the country were celebrating and rejoicing. Tears of joy flowed through the city of Detroit. As for me, I was just glad that every Detroiter who wanted to have an opportunity to vote got that chance and were a part of history. And I was relieved that somewhere in our fair city, there was a sister with a Black Panther baseball cap, dancing, celebrating, rejoicing, and relieved over the fact that we didn't fuck that up. You know, the era of Camelot went by real fast. Those 8 years that Barack Obama was president of the United States went by like 8 months. Then in 2016, the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus came to town. Let me tell you, that was perhaps one of the worst elections I had ever administered in my life. Murphy's Law was in full effect. What could go wrong did go wrong. That year, we had to issue to every voter, not one, but 2 ballots, along with the long list of candidates that appeared on the ballot. There were 8 proposals. Now, we trained all of the poll workers and equipped them with everything that they needed to do in order to execute their job. But it was a logistical nightmare. Poll workers struggled to keep up, and voters stood in line frustrated. And then to top things off, voting systems, all the tabulators all over the city began to malfunction. Y'all remember that? It was the worst night of my life. When the results came in, Hillary Clinton lost Michigan by 11,000 votes in a state where 4.8 million people cast ballots. It was a punch in the gut. Not because of the results. You have to understand, as an election administrator, all we really want to do is make sure that people have an opportunity to vote and produce results. As a personal citizen, private citizen, I have my own opinion about who wins and who loses. But at that time, I was frustrated simply because when the finger pointing started and when they tried to figure out why she lost, they pointed at the Detroit Department of Elections and the work that we had done. People that I had considered friends accused us, accused me, and I was sick and tired. I said, I'm done. This is it. I've had it. I hate to be dramatic, but it's time for me to call it quits. I had lost my mojo, and I was ready to leave. And I looked for an opportunity, and I found it. In 2019, I got this great opportunity to work at Wayne County as the Director of External Affairs. My responsibility was simple. I had to work with the 43 jurisdictions, share with them all of the opportunities and programs that Wayne County had to afford its 1.8 million citizens in order to make life better. Man, that was a great job. I didn't have to worry about counting another ballot. I didn't have to deal with all of the backlash. I didn't have to do none of that. I had an opportunity to forge new relationships with new people, and everything was right in my life. And then came 2020. The pandemic hit Wayne County and Michigan in March of that year, and boy, was it hell. People were getting sick, people were dying, and it had a tremendous impact on my job, everybody's job in this entire country, our lives, and it had a tremendous impact on the Detroit Department of Elections. That August primary, over 1,000 poll workers, seasoned and experienced poll workers, didn't report to work on election day. As a result, the totals came in late. The city of Detroit took a gut punch. The state, the county, the media put a lot of pressure on them to get it right for November. And at the end of August, I got a phone call, and it was the city clerk. She talked to me about the challenges that she was having, and she needed assistance. And I said to her, "Do you need me to come back?" And she said, "You know I do," and I went back. On September 1st, I found myself standing in the lobby of the Detroit Department of Elections, looking at that Gettysburg Address and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. What in the hell am I doing here? I had a good job working for Wayne County. I was done with elections. My mojo was gone. Why did I come back? Well, that's what you do when a friend calls you and they need help. That's what you do when you love the city that has given so much to you. You go back and you help and you put your hands back to the plow. So mojo or not, I was back and I had to work. The clerk made it clear that my responsibility was to count absentee ballots for that upcoming election. You know that nobody wanted to go to the polls in that election. So the majority of the people in Detroit voted by absentee ballot. We received 200,000 absentee voter requests for the November election. Then all of the news came. The United States Postal Service said they couldn't guarantee the mailing or the return of absentee ballots. The elected president said you can't trust the mail-in ballots. But in the midst of that, we had to recruit more than 18,000 people to assist us. 1,800 people to assist us in counting those ballots. The clerk reached out to the business community, the religious community, the Divine Nine, and everyday people. And we decided to pay them a premium for coming out in the pandemic. Every person who worked the election got $600 a day. And people came in droves. We had to turn hundreds of people away. They had their mask on, and they were like, "Where the money at? Let's go." And then it was our responsibility to train all these people. Most of them had never done anything like this before in their lives. And I remember that every training class, I would go to that class and I would say to that audience, have you ever wanted to be part of something bigger than yourself? Well, this is it. And before I knew it, election day was upon us. The state decided to change the law to make sure that we had ample time, so they gave us the Monday before election to pre-process. So on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we were responsible for counting 174,000 absentee ballots. Just imagine being in this big hall, Hall E of TCF Center. You have 134 tables, 5 people to a table, and you got 3 days to get it done. It was a monumental task. And everything went well, for the most part. On Monday, things went well. On Tuesday, things went well until right around 10 o'clock on election night, when the numbers flipped and Joe Biden was up. All of a sudden, hundreds of people who didn't live in Detroit converged on Huntington Place inside of Hall E. Their goal: to undermine, thwart, cause a riot, and steal democracy from the city of Detroit. They talked and insulted our poll workers. They banged on glass. They stood right in the center of the processing area. Stop the count! Stop the count! Stop the count! I had to get to the stage on the mic, and I told every last one of those poll workers, ladies and gentlemen, this is democracy at its finest. 2 parties vying for their candidate. But we stand on the fence. And we stand as the gatekeepers of democracy. And as such, Detroiters are depending on us to count every last absentee ballot. And we won't stop until that last ballot comes into this processing center. You all would have been proud of 2 groups. One, the boys in blue. The Detroit Police Department did a phenomenal job in making sure that every poll worker, every challenger, every person from the media was secure. And then you would have been proud of those poll workers. Not one flinched, not one left. They stayed vigilant and diligent to ensure that every last ballot was counted. I remember after I came down off of the stage, this sister came up to me. She was from Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And she said, Daniel Baxter, this is not Selma, Alabama. We are not in 1958. And this will not happen on our watch. I was so inspired by those words and her encouragement, because that was the exact sentiment of every individual that was in that processing center. At the end, we were able to count all 174,000 absentee ballots, and Detroit made a difference in federal, state, and local offices. The next 3 years, we began to work to ensure that we perfected our craft, that we dot our I's and cross our T's, because we knew that by 2024, we were going to be up for the same type of challenge. So every last one of those poll workers bought into the plan and the program. And then we found ourselves back in the midst of the 2024 presidential election. We moved from downstairs in Hall E to Hall A upstairs, and the law had changed, giving us 9 days to count and process absentee ballots. On election day, when we came in, CNN, MSNBC, Detroit News, Detroit Free Press, media outlets from China, from Switzerland, from all over the country, even Juju Chang from ABC was inside of Hall A on election day because they had all the cameras on the operation anticipating the same chaos that occurred in 2020. But nothing happened. The only thing that happened was that we cast and counted approximately 99,000 absentee ballots. A media representative interviewed me and asked me the question, "So Baxter, are you having any problems?" I said, "Absolutely not. The Democrats and the Republicans are in here singing Kumbaya." It's just like watching paint dry. It was a boring election. And as an administrator, that's what you want. A boring, dull, and mundane elections. You just want to count ballots and produce results. And that's what we did in the 2024 election. You know, when I think about it and reflect upon my almost 40 years, I'll be working in elections for nearly 40 years in July of this year. When I look back over all of the things that I experienced, I've been a part of some of the most historical elections in the history of this country. But you know, the history that I really look forward to being a part of is when every Detroiter, every Michigander, every United States citizen understand that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is inextricably connected to the ballot box. And when we get to that point, when we realize that and get out and vote in large numbers, then we'll truly live out what Abraham Lincoln said in the Gettysburg Address. And that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. God bless y'all. Peace. Thank you.
History makers,